This week on the OneCast, Trey is MIA. So Ben and I are going to talk about the recently released 2024 Elite schedule, classic qualifiers, and I'm sure everybody's favorite topic, forward-facing sonar.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Oh, God, it's a toad, son. It's a toad, dude.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's going to be a bad day.
What is going on, OneCast?
Hey, I could get this because as you heard in the little open there, we're a little MIA without Trey here, and he's usually the one that pushes the button. So Pete's trying to do the intro and hopping all around here. But welcome back to the OneCast. Again, Trey's in upstate New York doing some Army stuff this week. So Pete and I are holding it down. But before we get started here, as you guys know, join the Snagless Revolution. Go to onecastfishing.com. Use the code the OneCast. Save to 10%. Get your snagless jigs, long neck hooks, soft plastics, weeded nets, basically everything you need to fish from the top to the bottom.
That's right. Covers it all.
You set now?
I'm set. I think we got all the buttons pushed.
If you're watching the YouTube, then you probably see them jumping around.
Yeah, I'm like a ninja. 1 second I'm in one seat, the next I'm in another. So we're all over the place. But yeah, excited to be back. Bass released their schedule. We also have the early, I guess what you would say, the classic qualifiers. There could be some changes there depending on what happens in the last three opens.
Yeah, as I understand it, and we'll talk about it. We'll talk about who's in, who's out of the Bassmaster Classic. Obviously, there's a few Bassmaster Opens that are left. So those names are obviously to be determined, as well as Bass Nation and the team championship. But for the most part, based upon the AOI standings, they've got the elite guys set and slated for the Classic come next March out there at Grand Lake in Oklahoma.
Yeah, it's shaping up to be complete. There's a chance the first three out could get in if three double qualifiers. I think that's what Bass refers to them as. So if three elite or already qualified folks win, it'll bump those elite guys up that were the first three out in Angler of the Year points. So if any of the previous open three or any of the elite series anglers that are qualified win, then it could move somebody else in. But
you know that, and we're looking at the graphic here, and hopefully if you're watching this too, you'll as we refer to this, so the graphic will be up. But that's probably why at the bottom of it you have the first out, second out, and third out, and those are David Gaston, Scott Martin, and Bill Lowe, and they're on the bubble right now, and there's three open events left. So I guess that makes sense. That
would be their way in. So not that those guys are completely out. They've got a road that's completely non-dependent on what they
get a back. Yeah. It's like the NFL playoffs in there. You get a backdoor your way in.
They have no control. But we'll talk about the folks that are in. We'll run through it. Jeff Gustafson's in from winning the Classic last year. That's an automatic bid.
Do you want to do this when we get to the Classic on the schedule?
Are we going to go week by week? I mean, we can do that.
Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah. So let's talk about the schedule. I'm going to come right out, and I'm going to get the debate out there that's been on the internet. Everybody's been whining about forward-facing sonar, and I'm going to say whining because that's what it is. You're for it. You're against it. Typically, everybody complains because the schedule for BASS and BPT is a lot of spawn-heavy events. Bass has a schedule that is not spawn-heavy. They might hit the spawn in one, maybe two events, and that's super dependent on maybe three, looking at it here. And we'll talk about which ones they are. But there's three events where potentially they could hit the spawn depending on weather. Everything else should be either pre or post. So now everybody is complaining that the schedule, they went away from the spawn events, and now it's all going to be forward-facing sonar. So you can't win for nothing.
You always see that debate too about, you always see comments, and I just feeling out there that there's a lot of people who feel like, I wouldn't say a lot, but there's a minority out there who feel like you should have tournaments during the spawn. But for everyone out there, if you haven't seen the schedule yet, we won't go in too much detail, like every single date, but I just want to lay out the events at kind of the month that they're in, to kind of get a feel of how the schedule for Bassmaster is different than the schedules in the past. So,
because we'll do an episode around Christmas time, probably sometime in the winter when there's not as much going on. But we break down all the schedules. So we'll have Bass, we'll have BPT, and we'll have NPFL schedule. We'll talk about each lake and how we think it's going to play out. Now I want to go back
and listen
and see how close we were.
If you were around for one of our first 5 episodes, within the first 5, 3 of those was covering each one of the major pro circuits, Bassmaster, MPFL, and then MOF. And we broke down the schedule. We talked about the weights that it took to win in the last event and kind of, who our favorites were for that. We should go back.
And we all tried to predict AOI.
Yeah, we need to go back.
We'll bring that up when we do the episode this year and see where we're at.
When we do our total year wrap up, we should definitely
we'll have to go back
and listen to see how wrong we were, because I think we were pretty wrong.
I think we were pretty far off.
Yeah,
because it certainly didn't play out how we expected it to in some events, and other events didn't play out how we thought it to. I mean, I specifically remember talking about Santee and how late they were going, and it was going to be a forward facing, and it turned out the guys winning the guy that won was fishing spawn fish. He couldn't see, but that's what they were doing up on those outside cypress trees. So we were pretty far off, because I don't think any of us predicted somebody winning Okeechobee in February with a jerk bait in the river.
No, absolutely not.
So it'll be interesting, but they're starting off a little bit different this year.
So 2024. So last week in February, they were at Toledo Bend, and then the very next week it's back-to-back events. So 29 February to 3 March, they're just going over to Lake Fork. So back-to-back events kind of early in the year. Probably not spawn events. Probably a little bit. There may be a couple up spawning, you would think.
Forks one potentially.
Yes.
I don't have it on my list of likely spawn, but it is potential. Just because if it's warm, if they get a warm winter, there's a chance that one they might have some.
It's one of those events that, you may catch some fish off a spawn. There may be a couple guys who do that, but I don't think it's going to be the whole field. That's the way you have to do it to win.
That one, there's going to be some giant bags caught pre-spawn, and forward-facing sonar is going to play a huge role in that. I know folks don't want to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
But the guys there's going to be guys out there that are targeting very specific fish. And I feel we'll see another 1 or 2 century belts. I really believe. I think last time they were down there was when we had the 2. That was when Lee had one and Swindle had one. Yep. They finished 1, 2. And
that was a little later last time.
Yeah.
Now MOF, they did go. It was either last year or the year before. I think it's actually the year before. They went to Fork, and it was an earlier the year event because the water was still really low. I don't know if it was their first event in January, but it's not far from this time frame.
Wasn't that though when they had that water had been low, but they got that massive flooding through February, March? I think that was the year that they went. They also had a really weird cold front the week they were there.
It was really cold. It was windy.
I'd have to go back. There was a lot of weird stuff that went on in that one. They still caught him though. Alton Jones won that one, if I remember. Junior won that one, if I remember.
They caught him, but not like
they would.
Not like you.
If the weather sets up right, that's going to be one. Toledo Bend, I hear the hydrilla's back.
Mm-hmm.
That event's going to be. They're going to catch some fish. They catch them anywhere they go. But those 2 events starting off the year, back-to-back weeks, February, March, and then a little bit of a break, 2 weeks, and then they hit Grand Lake for the Classic. And we're going to spend a couple minutes on this. We'll talk about it more with Trey. But we want to kind of talk about where it sits now. So August 31st, Bassmaster released the initial qualifiers list for 2024. Like we said a little bit at the beginning, this could change. Hopefully the graphics up. Our plan is to have that up there for y'all to look. So the top you see Jeff Gustafson automatic in because he won the Classic.
Yep.
Patrick Walters automatic in because he won the 9th event of the year is the one that is an automatic win and you're in. So the St. Lawrence River, he won that one and is in. So those 2 guys won going that way. None have won an open yet that are Elite Series guys. So through the opens, you have Justin Barnes, Ben Milliken, Powell Kemp, who's a local, Adam Rasmussen, and Joey Nania, who's been around for a long time.
Yep.
Glad to see him win one. And then there's 3 to go. So there's 3 more opens. Depending on who wins those, this is where we're talking about there could be some shift in the elite guys that make it through the AOI points because if an elite person that's qualified wins one of those and double qualifies, it'll bump the next person up in. And then the Bass Nation College, all of that's still to be determined as they finish up their seasons.
And then from there, Bassmaster lays out the rest of the elite qualifiers. And so the way it worked out this year is that if you qualified 42nd or higher, if you finished 42nd or higher at Angler of the Year points, you were qualified for the Classic. So this year, First year out was 43rd. And
So Cole Sands was the last man in.
Yep.
Rookie. So that's pretty cool. So David Gaston, I don't know much about David, but he's the first out in points. So if one of these Elite Series double qualifiers, or if one of the guys that's already won an Open wins another one, that would bump him in because that'll open up an extra spot. So David Gaston's that first out. Second out is Scott Martin, which you brought up an interesting point that he's the only one of his little travel group that didn't qualify this year.
Yeah. He's probably getting a lot of.
I'm sure there's some text going.
Yeah, there's probably some smack being talked there. But yeah, Canterbury and both Harry, they both qualified for the Classic.
And then Bill Lowen was the third out, so he's got a shot depending on those last three. That's got to be a tough place to be in, where it's completely out of your control. I mean, you can't. There's nothing you can do but sit and watch and hope and pray that
it's almost like winning a lottery right now, because one, how many of these guys are fishing the Opens? Fujita probably is, right? And
Taku both, I think, are fishing them all this year.
So,
and that's about it. Joey was fishing some. See, I don't know if he's fishing any of the last three.
So you maybe have three guys who are qualified to fish in the Open. So the odds are
some of the young guys, maybe like Cole Sands, rookie, he may have fished more. I don't know, but I know a lot of the guys on here. You know, the Shryox, Brandon Card, Greg Hackney. You look at the guys that have been around for a while. John Cox, Robertson, they're not fishing them.
Yeah, and I was going to ask who surprised you by making it or not making it, but then I realized I think that's a silly question because this is based upon the AOI. We've been following all year. We've kind of expected who's going to make it or not.
Yeah, I mean, but there are some surprises, I think, because you look at for me, one is Hank Cherry didn't seem to be having a great year.
Yeah.
Was towards the bottom of that, but squeaked in. I believe, if I remember right, he was sitting out by several places at the beginning of the year, or at the beginning of Champlain.
Yeah.
And he rallied and had pretty solid tournaments and squeaked his way in. So if there's anybody on there that really surprised me, it was him, because he had kind of a lackluster year, for lack of a better term. Didn't really hear much out of him. The rest of the folks, like we said, we've been following. I'm sure there's some others that made a big push there at the end. Anybody really below Polyanik probably was stressing a little bit going into those last couple events.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And we're able to work their way in. Was there anybody on there that really surprised you?
No, again, we've been following it. I mean, these have been the names that have been consistent all year long.
Yeah.
I can't think, there's always names who don't make it, household names because they didn't have a good year. I don't see Seth Fighter up there. I don't see
no Seth, no John Cruz didn't make it again. Swindle didn't qualify this year.
So there's always names like that who don't make it, because when you're only talking 42 to 44 of the 100 guys who are going to qualify, there's always going to be big names who don't make it. So doesn't really surprise me too much based upon how the year shaked out.
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting year this year in bass. There was a lot of new winners. Not that there isn't. That's something Trey brings up all the time, and I argue with him because I'm like, look at the repeat winners in bass. There's new winners every year, but I think sometimes the guys we see winning are guys who have been around for a long time, and we just kind of assume a guy like Bill Lowen, like he's been fishing the elites for 10 years or so, and he won his first one last year, and everybody's like, oh, well, Bill had never won one. Same with G-Man. Like, a lot of people have no idea that Gerald Swindle never won an elite event. He's never won a blue trophy. Has 2 Angler of the Years. Obviously, is a heck of an angler. I saw somebody arguing on our short from last week. There were a couple guys that got into
on
each
Facebook.
Other.
Yeah. So we were talking about this last week, and if you listened, then you heard this. But it came up that how hard it is to actually win, because there was some luck involved. Being in the right place, right time to win one. We were talking about how Joey had won 2. As a rookie, that was where the conversation was. But it came up Swindle's never won one. Kyle Welcher, who won Angler of the Year, hasn't won an event, but yet he was the most consistent. And then someone was making some silly comments on Facebook.
Some silly comments like they do on Facebook. Facebook's wild.
Yeah.
You know, if I look at all the different social medias with all of our stuff for the podcast, the business, personal, and it definitely seems like Facebook is the one where people wild out the most. Instagram seems to stay pretty. TikTok gets a little bit squirrely from time to time, but Facebook, man, them people on Facebook are just
and there'll be paragraphs.
I think they just go on there looking for a fight. Like, I'm bored at work, I'm gonna go fight somebody on Facebook.
I like it. I like the engagement, the conversation.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
it's it was just talking about the sport and they're passionate, who their guy is and that type of stuff. So it wasn't. It was crazy, but it wasn't like
it wasn't anything out of control.
line.
But that's at Grand Lake, so that's gonna be interesting. It's been a little while since they fished Grand Lake.
It's definitely going to be I would imagine a very heavy pre-spawn. It'll be one of those events where it won't be straight winter.
Yeah,
they'll be moving, transitioning. There's probably some fish. Like, you're going to hear it. You're going to hear it. I guarantee you're going to hear it from every single angler they interview. They want to move up. They want to move. Like, they're right here. They want to go up.
Unless it's super warm, and then they might be up. Like, that's one of those events that possibly could have some spawn implications.
Well, that was just, because we do the same thing.
We're like, as soon as they get a little bit, that water warms up a little bit.
They want to move.
They want to get up there any minute now. And it's funny, while we're talking, fish moving, like, when you talk to people, everybody's talking about, they're starting the fall transition. There's no start to that fall. Like, the fall transition, one thing I've learned is as soon as you get that first cool night, it changes everything. It's not like a gradual thing. You get that first cool night, those bait fish start to concentrate. They start to move to structure. That's when you can really lay into the fish on structure where they might not be in the summer. You might not have a wad of fish on a brush pile on a point. Once they start that fall transition, once you get that first cool night, those fish start to move. And I
don't know if I'd call it a transition in the fall.
No,
they just go
wherever the bait. They really go wherever the bait's at.
Yeah.
If you can find the bait, typically you can find some fish. And then you got to do the dancing act of finding the right amount of bait, because I can't tell how many times I've rolled up in the back of a creek and you could walk across the shad.
I turn
and
around.
you're not getting bit.
I turn around.
Yep. I get out of there. I mean, there's fish blowing up everywhere. You can see it on forward facing fish feeding, and it doesn't matter what you throw. They aren't eating what you have. You can't compete with that. So then you get that fun act of trying to find a smaller wad of fish. But that Grand Lake one, it's probably going to be, they want to move up event. But again, if it's warm, that's far enough down. Tulsa's in an area where if they have a warm winter, there's a chance we could see some fish on bed. So that was one of the ones I said, potentially you might see some spawn fish. Probably going to be a little bit early, but the possibility is always there. And then they go to Florida, where there definitely won't be any spawn on the Harris chain in April. So they get a pretty good break. I say that, but I feel like the schedule is a little bit more compact this year, but they're going to different places because they have 2 events in February, 2 events in April, and 2 in June.
Well, so they've got back-to-back in February, back-to-back in April, back-to-back in June, and back-to-back in August.
Oh, yeah, I missed that one. So they did August just like they did this year.
So that's one of the things that, that struck me too, is that one, it was very much, it seemed compact. The season is ending roughly the same time, but the events seem to be back-to-back, more compact, less turnaround in between. And then 2, it definitely seemed to be a east-southeast bias in this sense that if you take out the Classic, because not everyone goes there, you got one event.
Louisiana, Texas,
West
Oklahoma, and that's it.
Yeah.
Tulsa's not west. Yeah. Tulsa's east of the Mississippi.
I guess technically
2. So the Toledo Bend and Lake Fork will be it.
Yeah.
But we've been seeing that. And that's been one of the complaints I've seen from fans. Like, they're not going far enough west, and they're not going far enough northwest. Like, they're not hitting the Minnesotas, the Michigans.
So they 2 years ago they did.
It
seemed like every other year they would hit out. Because last year for bass they went to South Dakota and Minnesota. But
talking to the folks we know in the elites, like, they're probably not going to the Delta anytime soon. And that's just the nature of it. Like,
they're not going to.
The anglers live over here. The days of them driving all the way over there to fish an event and then drive back ended when Citgo stopped giving them free fuel. Like, then the part of that's the non-endemic sponsors, because you have to take these anglers. Everybody thinks these anglers are getting all their fuel for free still and all of this stuff. Like, these guys are paying for the fuel and everything
It's a
out
long
of their
ways
own
out.
pocket. They might get some sponsor monies to help, but it's not the same as driving. Most of these guys all live. Alabama's about the furthest west.
You know, the only way that would work is that if you had like the final event instead of having back-to-back events,
Yeah.
you stacked it to where that one was more separated.
Yeah, you could make that work.
The other thing that was interesting, not just being compact and, you know, Southeast dominated, but 2 Florida events, then just right up to South Carolina, then 2 Alabama events, and then 2 New York. Like there's not a lot of geographic
No,
separation.
and then really, if you look at the break between the last June event and the first August event, they get over a month off. So that'll be a nice break before the Northern Swing. That Lake Champlain event and the St. Lawrence potentially could see spawn fish depending on the winter.
Yeah, let's get there in a second.
Yeah, so we were at Harris Chain after Grand Lake in the Classic. Then they go to St. John's River where they didn't go this year, but they went the year before. So they took a year off from St. John's.
And again in
Those are in
April this
April.
year.
Yep.
So Harris Chain, again, you never know with the weather down there. There's probably 1 or 2 fish in the bay, but the Harris Chain's probably going to be an offshore event.
Yeah, especially near. Yeah,
I don't know about the St. John's and the Tidal River system. I guess if they go down into Lake George, you know,
maybe that's going to be. I think that's going to be it. Somebody's going to win that throwing a frog around.
yeah.
I think so. Those fish are going to be up feeding post spawn. Then May, Lake Murray. So they come right up April from St. John's, fish Lake Murray.
And that should be, again, maybe 1 or 2 fish left on beds, but that should be a post spawn transition.
That could go either. That's another one I had marked on mine as potentially a spawn event. Just depends on weather. Again, it's hard to predict these because I think last year everything we predicted was going to be a spawn event ended up not being, and the spawn this year seemed to go until July.
In the year before, it seemed like everything was a spawn event.
Yeah.
And it's just, you know, we used to think, you know, they tried to put these events around the spawn, and it used to be, because I looked up a few times, the events for a lot of times, especially the Florida early events, were around the full moon.
Mm-hmm.
Like they tried to, pick those windows for that to be able to happen. But this year they completely, it seemed like they wanted to go away from those events, and it should be exciting. It'll be different. We'll see more pre-spawn.
It's been a little while since they fished an elite event on Lake Murray, hasn't it?
No, they went there last year.
Well, did they go to Murray last year?
Yeah, I think so. Right? Because they went back to back. They went or that was
What's that?
Look it up.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
because
Look it up, but we'll talk. So Murray,
Murray,
they do the
because
throughout
both MLF, BPT, and Bassmaster did it. Because BPT went, because Poche couldn't fish it because he fished the MLF. So they both went there this year, and it was both.
But it had been a few years from this year, so now they're back to back in it. So that's interesting. That lake's got hammered. Poor Lake Murray. That's where they had the 459 boat high school championship.
That was Hartwell.
Oh, that was Hartwell.
Yeah.
You're right. Yep.
But
that's what I was thinking. Hartwell, other than the Classic, they haven't fished that.
They've both Murray showed out both for Bassmaster and for
it did
this year. So
when did they get? Let me look when they went.
It was May, April. Yeah, April 20th is when they were.
Yeah, and they were catching spawn fish. So you're going about 2 weeks later. Yeah, so that again, weather dependent, could sort of go either way, but it probably will be a post spawn. The Wheeler Lake has been. They fish a lot and open there about every year. It seems like there's been a lot of other stuff there. Smith Lake, we actually looked up. There hasn't been an elite event since it was the 150s in 04 there, and they hadn't fished it since 1968. Prior to that, and Bill Dance won that one.
There's been a couple opens there, and some like bass regional events and stuff there. But
they had a kayak tournament there. It's a big body of water, big spotted bass, big spotted.
And it's
bass.
South of Gunnersville, so I would imagine in June, late June, that's going to be an offshore type of event, which would be cool to see because you don't see that a lot. We haven't seen a lot of that in the last few years from the professional tours, like an offshore post-spawn largemouth event.
Yeah.
We used to see it a lot when they go to, Gunnersville or Kentucky Lake back in the day, kind of the ledge fishing events.
That Smith Lake too is going to be that'll be a 20+ pound spot bag winning.
I hope so.
They grow giant spots in Smith Lake. That'll be a fun one. If you're a fan of forward facing sonar, you're not going to like Smith Lake because it's going to look like when they fish the next two lakes, Champlain and the St. Lawrence. We all know what we're getting there next year. I don't know when we do our full out breakdown for St. Lawrence, I think we need to predict the number of century belts that come out of there.
I think so too.
It was 4 this year. It probably would have been 5 if Kyle Welcher's boat didn't break
and
down.
It was 2 last year, right?
2 last year. Yeah. Guys are figuring out how to catch fish different ways.
And I know we mentioned this, I think, last week or the week before, but last year when they St. Lawrence, when they had the first ever all smallmouth century belt, it was perfect weather.
Yeah.
It was like slick calm every single day. And this year the weather was not that at all. Maddie was talking about fishing 8-foot waves out there, but yet they still had, they had 4 century belts. So
4. And could have been 5.
Yeah.
Kyle was at like 98. Maddie was at like 95 pounds. So he was 1 fish away one of those days. It's going to be interesting to see how that one plays out next year for the St. Lawrence again. So 3 years in a row they've gone now. I think that's probably going to be the end event every year. Is that frog going again?
We got a cricket or a frog.
Yeah, there's a cricket or a frog that made his way into our studio, and I just heard it coming through the headset. So I apologize if it's annoying to y'all. Hopefully it'll be quiet here in a minute.
Yeah, but overall, I like the schedule. I
do too,
because it is a little bit different.
I do wish there was one 100% hammer spawn event where they're going to go out and catch big old gigantors. I like sight fishing. It's something I'm pretty good at. I enjoy doing it. I learn a lot when I watch them guys sight fish. So I kind of don't like that there isn't one, but I do, because it's been the last 2 years has been very spawn heavy. There's been a lot of sight fishing tournaments.
And look, going to Smith Lake, a lake they haven't been to in forever.
Yeah, more than 20 years.
They don't go to Wheeler very
often. I'd have to look when the last time an elite event was at Wheeler too, and I'll have more details on all these. Next time.
All the other events they've been to recently.
Grand Lake's one. I don't remember the last time an elite event fished Grand Lake. That one might be a while too.
Yeah, I know they've had multiple opens.
Yeah, I don't know when the last time an elite level event went there. But another thing we need to talk about is I don't know. We don't have the roster for Bass yet. We don't know how many people are getting cut. We know 70 was the line where you knew you were safe.
Yeah.
Guys trying to fish BPT and elites, there's 2 tournaments that you're not going to be able to fish, and that's Toledo End and St. Lawrence River.
That is a good point. So, we saw the schedule came out here, and, this applied to Poche this year. If he's back on Bassmaster next year, it will apply to him. Or if he's back on BPT again, no one knows what the layout of the roster for each of the tours yet. That hasn't been released, and I don't know if anyone will be in a position next year to fish both. But definitely those 2 events, Toledo Bend, and then what was the other one?
St. Lawrence.
St. Lawrence, right? They were within 30 days of each other. So those, and Bassmaster was later than both of them. So there's I think the only one that could apply to right now is Poche if he's fishing both next year. And again, we don't know how it's going to shake out, but that's definitely
we don't know if he's going to choose to fish both, if he's going to requalify for both. I know he requalified for BPT. I do not know about bass. I know this year he didn't fish high enough to requalify, but we talked earlier. I don't know if they take past events, because my understanding is if you're not a true rookie, you don't get those 2 years guaranteed. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. He may not want to fish both. He might have done that. We know John Cox did it one year and then was kind of like, I don't know if this is for me.
Yeah.
And he made his decision on where to stay and concentrate his time. I don't know if we're going to see the same from Poche, if he's going to try to fish both. It's a tough deal. I mean, outside, you're starting to see less and less of the guys fishing opens during the elite season, all of that. It's a lot of travel. It's a lot of time away from home. And outside of the folks that come over from Japan who don't have anything else to do. And when they interview those guys, they say, our families aren't here. Our friends aren't here other than our friends that we fish with. So we just fish every tournament we can. Like, might as well fish as much as we can.
That's why they're so good too.
Oh yeah. I mean, they're fishing more than anybody. It's I don't know how they do it. It's crazy the way Taku and Vegeta can just fish 9 opens, a full elite event, and then who knows what other tournaments they're jumping in, little locals or whatever they're doing. So it's going to be an interesting year. to see what they do. I didn't see any, not really any hot. Smith Lake hot weather could play a role.
Yeah,
Alabama in June.
Those Alabama events in June, right? Again, it's weather dependent. It depends on how fast that summer heat comes in, right? But because we know here in June, that time of June, like out on Harris Lake and Jordan Lake, that's when they start pulling off.
Yeah, that's usually when we're starting to get close to that 85-degree water.
That spoon bite's turning on. The football jig, the crankbait bite offshore, like that. That really starts to turn on around that time up here. And I know like Smith Lake's more up, I think, higher elevation, right? Because it's right below Gunnersville and stuff. So there's a little bit of that in play too. But yeah, I would imagine that definitely a post-spawn offshore.
Yeah, and hot weather, you got to have the right gear. So make sure if you're going to be fishing that hot weather, you head over to CarolinaWatersNC.com. Check out their lightweight UPF performance wear for your days out there on the water. It's going to keep you cool. It's going to keep you safe from the sun. If you spend a bunch of time on the water, it's imperative that you take care of your skin. Jimmy Buffett, we all know, just recently passed away from a very private battle with skin cancer, a guy that spent a lot of time out on the water. So make sure you do everything you can to take care of yourself. Get some Carolina Waters gear. When you're just lounging around, they have awesome, I'm not wearing one today, but they have awesome t-shirts. They're super comfortable. They fit well, true to size. They got a ton of different hats. You see Ben and I both have different styles on. I've worn a bunch of different styles on various episodes of the podcast. I've worn them out fishing. I have one that they keep telling me I need a new one because it's all sun, sweat, bleached and nasty. But, man, it's a lucky hat, so I got to keep rolling through this year. So make sure you head to CarolinaWatersNC.com. Grab you some new gear. They have a really nice new performance hoodie that's coming out. I don't know if it's on the website yet or not. I was able to get my hands on one before it got to the website, and it's awesome. It's got thumb holes and all of that stuff. They're also sublimated, not screen printed. So if you do wear performance wear and you get a screen printed one, that screen printing will stick to your skin. With sublimation, you don't have that, so you're not fighting that. The new shirts are sublimated. So again, head to CarolinaWatersNC.com. For the month of September, the code, the OneCast, all one word, is going to get you 20% off your order. And then we'll announce the new discount after the end of that. But make sure you head over and check that out. Again, CarolinaWatersNC.com. Use the code, the OneCast. Take care of your skin. Be comfortable when you're lounging around. Get you some sweet hats. And make sure you check out Carolina Waters.
I think we spent most of this episode so far talking about Bassmaster because that's the schedule that was just released. But I know on our live we've talked about it. I think we mentioned it before, but obviously MLF, BPT released their schedule, and I like that one too. And mainly because they're going to a place that's local, that's very different. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's probably the event I'm most excited about for both of them, just because it's somewhere that I spend a lot of time fishing. So to see how they go over and kind of attack it, that's my favorite time of year to fish it. So I hate that they're going to be there on what's usually a really good weekend.
And he's talking about the Chowan River.
The Chowan River, yeah. They're fishing out of Edenton. So I'm excited for that one. As far as overall schedule, I think that I like Bass's a little bit better, just because of the way they have their events.
So I guess we can run through it real fast.
So right? MLF, I'll read it real quick. So they're end of January, beginning of February, Toledo Bend.
That's an early event.
Very early. And then 2 weeks off, mid-February, end of February, they're at Santee. Early March is Red Crest on Lay Lake. Then they're going to Dale Hollow early April, which is an event nobody's been to Dale Hollow in a while. Lake Eufaula, Oklahoma, April, May, so first week of May. Then they're going to Kissimmee in May.
That's the heavy hitters.
The heavy hitters. That's a little bit later. That'll be an interesting one. Then June, or the first week of June, is when they're coming here to the Chowan. Then they're going to the James River, which will be an exciting one. That's fishery I really want to go up and fish.
That's late June.
And then early August, they're on the St. Lawrence River.
What sticks out to me about a couple things sticks out to me. Number one, I think it's been talked about a lot, is that there doesn't appear to be any spawning smallmouth events this year.
No.
So
maybe Dale Hollow, but probably early for that.
Yes, and that's a little bit that's a Tennessee smallmouth fishery, so they act a little bit different there. We all know that than the up north smallmouth. But I mean that's the big one. But too, like they're going to, just like Bassmaster this year, but MLF has done this more in the past, is that they're going to these lakes at non-traditional times. I mean that's early Toledo Bend, Santee in February, and that's early usually.
Yeah,
right. That's a lot of times you see the schedule start February 20th in Florida. Right. And they're going to be in the second event in Santee.
Yep.
And then, going to Kissimmee heavy hitters, back in May, different time. So it should be really good because, I like seeing these events sometimes that are at different times because these are all destination lakes. And some of these I like to travel to, and I have traveled to in the past, and I want to travel to the ones I haven't been to. But very rarely, right, well, with the fishing business, with all the trade shows and stuff going on, are you able to get there at the optimal early, like spawning time?
Not usually.
So to be able to see guys go down to Florida at April, May, and fish them offshore in shell beds and grass, right, jerk bait, it's definitely going to be cool to see. Obviously, the local event.
It's
too.
when I'd rather go too. Like I'd rather go down there in May than in February, just because you're not gonna have to deal with as many tournaments and things that time of year. Like so, as an angler, it's a lot of times easier to take a week off to go fishing in May than it is in late January, early February, because we're just coming out of the holidays. Like for us guys that work a normal job, like we've just had a couple weeks off already. We're trying to get spun back up. It's really hard to say, oh yeah, I know we just came back from a week off for Christmas, but I'm taking a week off to go fishing. So you learn, I feel like you learn a lot more in those off times too. Like you learn how guys look at bodies of water when water temperatures are different. We always hear people say, I can't find, once the spawn ends, where, like, I don't even know where to find the fish. We're going to learn where to find them this year. It's going to be interesting, but I think overall schedule I like the best is I like Bass is better just because of the way they have the schedule built. I do like the Chowan a lot, and I do like the James River. I like that they're fishing two rivers that aren't the St. Johns and the St. Lawrence, because river fishing's fun to me.
I'm surprised those are not back-to-back events for them.
Yeah,
it's literally 3 hours.
There's a week between them.
Literally
weird.
3 hours up the road.
Yeah, that's kind of odd. Like, hey, everybody go home for a day, and then what's going to end up happening is you're going to have a bunch of guys that are just hanging out in that area. So if you're in that area, like a lot of those guys probably aren't going to make the drive home on the 9th.
Yeah,
spend 2 days at the house and then drive back.
If you guys want to come out and sit on the podcast and go fishing, come on over.
Yeah, anybody, any of the BPT guys, you want to come show me how to catch fish on Jordan Lake post spawn, I'd be more than happy to give you some fuel money. No, but seriously, they're both really good schedules. I mean, I've been super critical of MLF and how I don't like their change of the 5 fish and all of that. And everybody just well documented our podcast how I feel about it from an entertainment value. But I really like the schedule that they've put out. I like the schedule that Bass put out. What I don't like, I guess, I don't know what I don't like it. The irony in all of this is for the last 3 years, we've heard everybody complain about spawn events. Now we don't have spawn events, and you look on the internet and everybody's complaining because everything's going to be forward facing. So at the end of the day, lesson learned, you can't make people happy no matter what you do.
Look, I will say, I think that's very true for Bassmaster. When I look at the BPT schedule here, Chowan, James River, depends on where they're at in the Chowan because it's not really a true tidal fishery. It's a wind tide coming off the sound, but they will pull out, but it's less likely to play a factor in those two events.
I think it's going to play a huge factor in the show.
And
if I'm being honest with you, like I feel like somebody's going to win the show one. They're going to utilize forward facing like we don't as locals. They're going to find those offshore humps and stuff in the sound if they can fish it, and they're going to use it to catch those bigger fish that everybody's like they just not molested. Because most folks down here that fish the Chowan, the Roanoke, all of that, fish the main river stuff, which everybody knows, the outside trees, the hurdles. There's thousands of hurdles down there that guys have dumped, a hurdle for those. That don't know,
and like
a man-made tree or structure that you put out there.
And you fish it down by Edenton. Like I've only fished it up towards what is that, Ahoskie?
Yeah.
Right. So like
down there is all flipping cypress trees for 99%.
Right. And that's all I did was cypress trees and lily pads going up the creeks off the river. But it will be it'll be a phenomenal.
What's going to be cool on that one is weather dependent. Them guys are gonna get to run all over the place, and there's a ton of different rivers in that system. I haven't seen. I'm gonna see if I can click on it. No, there's nothing to click on. I don't know what their off limits are going to be as far as the tournament limits. If there's rivers they're not going to be able to fish, because if some of those guys can make aren't afraid to make the it's about 70-mile run to the alligator, like that time of year can catch some absolute giants out of the alligator river.
And what I mean about forward facing sonar not playing as much as a role, someone could go out and win it. Just like they did at Okeechobee for Bassmaster this year, or down at.
I'm not counting it out anywhere anymore.
No, I'm not either. But both at the James and Chowan, there could be multiple guys that just go up in some pads and throw a frog and actually find the right stretch and actually.
I mean, I've
catch 30 pounds a day.
On more than one occasion, I've had 25 pounds before 7:30 in the morning on a frog in that time of year. It's just if, like you said, if they find the right stretch. It's possible. It's repeating that for 3-4 days. It can be tough because anybody that's ever been down there, if you fish Florida, it all looks so good, but it's like little stretches where you get into them.
Mm-hmm.
And those guys will have the advantage of fishing Florida, and they know like if you catch fish, slow down and spend a little bit of time there. It's a lot of the same. James River is going to be cool. That one is very tidal, very tidal. So. I don't have a lot of experience on tidal rivers. I know I fished one this year in a trailer tournament down there, and I fished a tidal river. And my fish I found the day before were at high tide, and I went in there in the morning and did not get bit. And then as soon as tide came up, I caught my 5. In like the last 10 minutes, I had to fish. So I learned, tide is important, which I knew, but I didn't realize it didn't play in my mind because it's not something I spend a lot of time on.
I haven't really fished a lot of tidal fishery. So that's the only thing I learned. Actually, I learned it mostly, I think, watching John a couple years ago when he won the St. John's. Cruz, because he wouldn't show up to his juice spot until I think it was 1 hour later each day because the tide changes by each hour each day.
Yeah.
So he could be at that optimal time, and that's just little details. Like, okay, that's what I want to stick in the back of my brain for the future.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of those little details this year from both organizations and their schedules, and I'm sure the NPFL once they release theirs, we're going to have some interesting
I'm
events
waiting, there. Obviously we know what their championship is, but besides that, I'm looking for. Hopefully they'll release their schedule too because I'm looking forward to that. As well.
Yeah, it's going to be a good year. There's some different fisheries, some new fisheries, some very different times of the year that they're going to, even traditional fisheries. So seeing how that all plays out, seeing what happens with this whole forward-facing debate that's going on. I don't know how much of it is actually in the organizations. I will say that MLF has been very quiet about it, including their anglers. I actually saw one of their anglers make a post today about it, saying like, you notice how MLF isn't getting involved. And I didn't think about this. He's like, if Bass bans forward-facing sonar from their tournaments, it's going to push all those kids that are confident in it and like it to start fishing the MLF side of things. And he's probably right. Like, you could push a generation of anglers. So that could be something to help the organization if one or the other does. It's not getting banned. I'm 100% certain that it's not going to get banned anywhere. But it is interesting to see the politics of everything playing a role in how certain organizations are or aren't taking a stance or saying anything about it. So at the end of the day, when you look at the polls, a bunch of the pros have done, it's mostly in favor of not banning it.
Yeah.
And I get why some folks don't like watching the events. I think they can do a better job of how they present that information, like they did with the Mega Live and tying it into the live feed. That ability is there with Garmin. I don't know if it's a sponsor deal or what it is, but maybe that's a way to do it. Like if you can watch that screen while you watch the angler fish and kind of get an idea of how they're presenting the bait. For me, I love it because I'm not super good with forward-facing sonar, and watching those guys do it, I learn a ton just watching them do it and talk about it.
I mean, it frustrates me. And just like any podcast right now in the bass fishing world, we always go down this forward-facing sonar.
Yeah, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole.
It's gonna be here. People get mad. They don't want to watch guys looking down the screen. But 5 years ago, you would just look at guys blindly casting, whether that's to the bank or to like an offshore grass pile, and okay, they're looking up at the horizon and casting instead of looking down and casting. They're doing the
it's not. It hasn't changed. It's just and that's without getting too into it. Like I talked about in our last episode, if you didn't listen, like people just don't like change, and at the end of the day, it's a big change, and so you're gonna have people divided. Some folks will take change with open arms. When it comes to technology, maybe not everything, not all change is good, but I think any change with technology for the most part is good. I feel like if Bass or MLF or any tournament organization was going to ban it, they would have already. If you look at the stuff they have, AquaView, like the second that AquaView was released, they were like, yeah, you can't use it in a tournament. Those type of things, they've been pretty quick. The Alabama rig, I think, was 1 year, and they were like, we're not going to let this. Like, it's not going anywhere. If you want to have the conversation about it and give your side, like, all I'm going to say about it is do it in a respectful way to the people that are okay with it. There's no need to fight and tear each other down. Yeah. Hunter Bogman put a great post up about this whole debate and how people are being with one another. Go check that out on Facebook, on his Facebook page. He hit the nail on the head. Like we're all doing the same thing. We're just going out there to catch green fish. And we don't have to fight and tear each other down as anglers because we don't agree with how John wants to go catch his fish instead of Bob out there catching them, not using it and all that. Like we're all doing the same thing. So, lift each other up. Just be happy that we're able to fish and we don't have to worry about,
I think that's good. That's a good way to end this thing on a positive note.
Yeah. Help each other out and
just go catch fish. Doesn't really matter how you do it.
Go catch fish, however you like.
Just do it legally.
Yeah, please do it legally.
Just do it legally. Have your fishing license, right? Don't do anything illegal. But look, cane pole, Zebco, right, $1,000 reel. They all catch fish.
Yeah.
So LiveScope or not, you can go out there and catch fish, and that's what we're all about. So hopefully we can get out there in the water and everyone's out there and.
I'm getting out soon. Fishing. I took a little break for the heat of the end of summer here because it was been 100,000 degrees every day. I was planning to go tomorrow, but it's like 80% chance of thunderstorms. Yeah. If it was just rain, I would go, but I don't like messing with lightning on the water. So I'm going to maybe go Sunday if the weather breaks. If not, I have a tournament next weekend, and I'm just going to go blind fishing. I'm just going to go fishing. So that's all I got. You got anything?
No, I'm good.
Hey, we appreciate y'all listening. Make sure you check out our sponsors we've talked about. Make sure you check out the veteran organizations we talk about. Everything's linked in the description wherever it is you're watching. Click those links. Use those codes. Help support those that help us continue to grow this and help us continue to grow a culture of anglers, helping anglers one cast at a time.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Oh, God, it's a toad, son. It's a toad, dude.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day.